And so the key of successful people is they execute no matter what. They don't say, if only I was feeling better, if only I was focused. Losers say that. Winners say, if there's a problem, how do I overcome it?
Hello and welcome to M26 Fit, the podcast that powers your spirit, mind and body. I'm Magnus Olsen and I appreciate you tuning in today as we dive into powerful stories and strategies from top athletes, health experts and everyday warriors. On this special episode, we're collaborating with the Mastering Podcast to bring you an exclusive conversation with Dr. Phil Jauncey, and joining me as my favourite co-host, Lucas Meadowcroft and Don Sanka.
I saw somewhere that you've got 4 degrees as well.
Yeah.
Is that to catch up to your dad, or is that?
No. So I have a bachelor's degree in major in psych, in philosophy and classics. Yeah. Then I had a bachelor of divinity for theology and also human growth development for children. Then I did my master's in educational psychology and counseling and my doctorate in education psychology and counseling.
Oh, and you're a theologian as well. Well, this is really interesting.
So so it's a background. So we had to learn Hebrew and Greek, the languages of the Bible, when I was going through to translate.
Do you still remember them today?
Bereshit bara Elohim et hashemayim va'et haaretz. That's Genesis 1:1. In the head of times, the one who you put your fingers to made the place where the waters come from and where you stand.
Well, I totally knew that.
Yeah,
I'll have to translate that. With
you didn't.
Wow, that's impressive.
But I'm not fluent in them. You know, I can do them, but I'm not fluent.
I was going to say I got 1 more degree and a PhD to go to catch up to him, but the way he's talking right now, doesn't matter how many I do. I don't think I'm going to get.
So what are your degrees in?
Theoretical physics, mathematics, business, and I just did my MBA.
Oh, well done.
So
yes.
So you're going to do a doctorate?
That's the plan. Yeah, I just need to find a subject that I want to focus on.
That's interesting because some of the talk around like AI, what's that degree worth like in the future?
I think it's still going to be, it depends on, like PhDs are not just going to disappear. Like that's research projects, research through publications. That's always going to be around, right? So you're going to, there are certain parts of education that's always going to, I'm in the education field as well.
They're just using technology to research a lot quicker.
Yeah.
Smarter.
We've got a guy who's going to come on pretty soon that's actually developed this new AI technology where it'll write research-based papers for you.
Yep.
He's working with the UQ at the moment. So he's working with the head of neuroscience research at UQ. So it's the next evolution of AI is actually integrating AI into the research field. So
wow.
Yeah. They can do a lot more. They can do a lot more research,
Yep.
The idea of you doing a PhD is really not the research you do, is to really show that you are high enough in your area to have lateral thinking and research thinking.
Yep.
And sadly, so many times they get caught up in the research rather than the effect. And that's where universities have started taking a step back. Because
that's so well said.
Yeah. Because for me,
the research and the effect.
I'm more focused on the research side. It's not,
Well, when I did my doctorate, I decided to do something that nobody ever done, because going back a bit, when I was at younger, I was really busy and people called me up and said, I don't have time to see you, but can you write out what you wanted to see? And I found it helped them. So I said to my doctoral committee, I want to do that. And they said, oh, but no, nobody's done anything there. And I said, I thought that's what this is all about. So what they wanted me to do research for them.
Yep.
So they got another publication.
So, okay.
Playing the game.
Yeah.
And
what's your thesis? What did you end up
with? Well, I actually what I worked out is that, and it's so complex, but it's the way your brain works. And the brain says, if I give you a problem and you're not trying to fix it, I'll get you to self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I got 3 groups of people going to a counseling center where I wasn't seeing it because obviously it's my research. And the first group, they went for counseling 1 hour a week for 3 weeks. And at the end of that time, I pre and post tested. I did something from Leon Fessinger and made a scale. So they average improved about plus 22. Got another group every day. They had 3 1-hour sessions, same as the control group. But also every day they had a 5, and again, they had to write for 5 minutes. Give them lead today, only if I feel, just work for 5 minutes. So they had 21 5-minute writings plus the 3 1-hour sessions. So remember the 3 1-hour sessions plus 22, they improved plus 133. And then I had another group, they had to initial when they thought about it every day. So they had 21 5-minute thinking plus 3 1-hour sessions. So remember, the control group plus 22, the control group with writing, the other group with writing plus 133. What do you think their score was, the thinking group?
By initialing their thoughts every time, 200?
Minus 122.
Oh, wow.
The opposite.
See, the thing is that
It's
when you
so
think
bad.
about something, so if somebody says think about it, they're stuffing you up. Because you see, if you've insulted me, I could go for days worrying about it, but my brain says you're not fixing it. You're really thinking, if only you hadn't said it. As soon as I write down, you said I reminded you the south side of a northbound camel train. You said you could double my intelligence, remain the same. By the third sentence, I say, where do I go from here? And see, that's what life's all about. It's like in sport. If you have a passive mindset versus an active mindset, that's a term I developed about 2 years ago, and we've had a lot of success with it. Passive mindset, I hope I play well, hope we don't lose, hope things go okay. And see, there's no strategy. So the brain helps you self-sabotage. Active mindset, attack the gaps, do A, B, or C. We call them flags, where there's some flag of you doing. And when you do that, you have a good game. See, my goal is you should never have a bad game. You'll have bad moments. Bad game means you turn your mental computer off. So what happens is we're teaching people, why does your brain self-sabotage? Because the skills of a team that's way ahead, for example, the Broncos in the Grand Final 3 years ago, their skills were no different at the beginning of the game, at the end of the game. What had happened is they turned the computers off. And I know this because we had a couple of Broncos with us, the Dolphins, and when we're talking about how the brain works, they said, I wish we'd known that. But see, players don't know how their brain works. They think they got to feel good.
Yep.
And I tell people, if you believe you have to feel good, you give up your sport. Why would I say that? If you got to be positive, why should you give up your sport if you have to be positive?
So it's very logical driven. This is the activity I need to do, and I focus on that activity, I get the outcomes.
But go back to my question. Why should you give up your sport if you think you've got to be positive? Give up broadcasting
Anything, really,
if you
yeah.
think you have to be positive. Because you
That
can't
doesn't
always
make-
be positive, can
I
you?
can't answer you because that doesn't make any sense to me.
So you can't always be positive.
No, you can't.
So it's like
Why can't you
I've
be
just
positive?
dropped a catch, and all day we've been in the field and nobody's getting out, and I dropped a catch, and I feel good. My marriage is breaking up. I'm going to feel good. But what skills don't I have? See, my dad years ago had a man come to him, and Dad was also a psychologist, another one with skills. And a man said, listen, I've fallen out of love with my wife. I want to divorce her. My dad said, fine. What I want you to do for the next 3 days, I want you to do something special for your wife every day. Like what? Take her out, buy some flowers. Okay. On the 6th day, we'll talk about the divorce. When he came back on the 6th day, he said, Dr. Jauncey, you're embarrassed. My dad said, why? I've fallen in love with my wife. See, what had happened was he was waiting to feel romantic to act romantically. It's the other way around. When you act romantically, you feel romantic. Yeah. So you don't have to feel good to play good. Bad grammar. But when you play good, you feel good.
Yep.
And so the key is that, for example, my plan A is speak quickly, tell bad jokes, and don't think about it before I speak. Like when you say, do you want to send me questions? No. Because my computer's on when I'm doing that. Bad jokes. For example, why did the guy call his girlfriend Hinges?
Why?
She's something to adore. A bear walks into a bar. He says, I'll have a gin and tonic. The barman said, why the big paws? Because I'm a bear. Holding up his paws, which we can't see this. So now the point about that is I could have had a really bad day. I could have had a headache. My wife could have picked on me. I always tell people when my wife and I got married, it's something in common. You know, she loved me and I loved me. And now, I remember a few years ago, almost 20 years ago, my son Tim had been playing indoor soccer. He was 18 at the time and broke his elbow. Anyway, he had it rewired. In our house, we have carpeted stairs. And he was coming down, and halfway down, because it's like 2 floors on 1 floor, halfway down, he slipped. And to protect his elbow, he twisted, because we just washed the carpets, twisted. And at the halfway down, there was a big pot for a plant. And he hit it from his back and severed his kidney. ICU. Now, fortunately, knowledge just saved it. But the very next day, I was running this course for people, and I was speaking quickly, telling bad jokes, but I was talking about Timothy. And they said, how can you be so upbeat with your son in hospital? And I said, would it help me to be downbeat? No. Would it help Timothy be downbeat? No. Help you from be downbeat? No. Why should we be downbeat? Everybody knows. When you don't feel good, you can't act good. I say, okay, people, let's imagine everybody here is so depressed, life sucks so much you need 3 straws, and a fire breaks out. How many say, I would leave, but I'm depressed? I'll wait till I feel better. Or I say, let's be positive. Let's imagine I tell you I've got a bar of gold bullion for each one of you outside, but you got to get it within 160 seconds. How many of you say I would get it, but I'm depressed? I'll wait till I feel better. And you see all the looks in their faces. So we picked up this garbage in life that should be fun. See, mindfulness originally, as far as I understand, when it first came out, it said, be mindful when you're down that you can still act up. The psychologist said, that can't be right. Everybody knows you have to be positive. Power of positive thinking. So if you're positive, you can't do it. I had a lady ring me up years ago. I was Dr. Phil long before the guy in America. And she said, oh, Dr. Phil, I'm so depressed. I can't get out of bed. What should I do? And of course I said, get out of bed. You see, the point is, people think, like I ask athletes, why do you have a bad game? And they look at me. Now, you'd think this should be pretty basic, isn't it? When you're teaching somebody in sport or bad broadcasting, bad event, bad podcast, why do you have that? And they think there's a God of form who's got nothing better to do. Today, you're going to suck, you'll be good, you'll be average. And you have players that can tell after 5 minutes, I was into the game. Said, what skills didn't you have? What? See, I think God's got better things to do than tell you whether it's a good game or a bad game. Now, it's really simple. And that's why a few years ago, I had to go to Marsden High School. They had this thing called Mates Talk Change. So if you're down, you should go, mate, and say, listen, I'm down. Mate's a game, but what do you say? And so you have all these people, oh, you should tell people when you're down. What do? Make an appointment. No, it's really, really simple. And what I teach people is there's a couple things you have to understand in life. Now, firstly, I'm a performance psychologist, not a sports psychologist. Sports psychology is a word about getting your mind right. I checked out a few years ago, there's a university course in sports psychology, and out of the 20 items that they do in 2 years, only 2 of them are about performance. All the rest is about getting your mind right, which is stuff you up, because what happens if my mind's not right? You know, we've just given up 20 points. Am I going to be positive? No, I can still act positively. So there's only 4 reasons why we fail. And what I'm talking about is the 4th, not the first. And the first reason you fail, I should go before that. What do you think is the difference between winners and losers, innocent and guilty? Same difference. Now remember, winners often lose. For example, Grant Hackett a few years ago, actually I got told it was incorrect. The math is incorrect. Grant Hackett broke a world record and came second. Same thing with girl before, but in fact, he couldn't have broken a world record. How do you know?
Because he didn't win.
No, because Thorpe broke the record before it.
Yeah. Okay.
So I've for years been saying he broke a world record, came second. Well, he broke the previous world record.
Yeah.
Anyway, now, and he didn't fail. See, in life, what you have is the innocent people always say, did I do the things that give me the best chance? See, do you know the difference between goals, objectives, and aims? This is a teacher thing. All right. An aim is why you do something in a game. My aim is that after this, I've helped you. Your goals, and you have no control over your aims. You can play really well and lose. You can do your absolute best and stuff up. Yes. But your goals are something you have control. Controls are, what are the things that I am doing that I find work for me? For example, in podcasts, when people talk to me, when I find if I talk about certain things, people later on said that was really helpful. Now, if at the end of this, I've done those things, but you said it sucked, I will be disappointed, but won't have regret. Regret would be because I got really nervous and stopped doing. See, nerves are just fuel. So it really bothers me. They say, well, that player was nervous. For example, the Campbell sisters at Rio de Janeiro, they said she was nervous. They were nervous. But they didn't have that. They had too much fuel. Nobody even understood it. So we've understood nerves are bad. Yeah. Obviously, you have nerves, you can't perform. You know, that's the myth that comes up. And so what we look at is saying, what am I doing? What happens? They didn't execute when they had the nerves. So if I didn't talk about the things I normally talk about, I can fail. So what I do with teams, we say, look, what are you doing when you have a good game? What do you do when you don't? Little things like talking. Remember Danny Brace one time said, has his hands above his waist. Little things that you do. What do you do to keep your computer on? Because you can always do that. I can always speak quickly, tell bad jokes. All right? You can tell, like, I'm not two-faced, because if it was, wouldn't be wearing this one. I mean, there's always things you can instantly do.
Yeah.
So if I'm feeling down, what do? Speed up my speech. Tell bad jokes.
And that makes you happier?
Yeah,
it
but
gives
my
you
brain,
more
well,
positive.
I'll talk about this in a minute.
think-
So you have a coach gets a new team, or I get a new real estate agent. All right, I say, okay, what steps you have to get them so they can execute at a level to be successful? All right? Remember a few years ago when Wayne first went to the Broncos the second time, he said, well, it'll probably take us 3 years to get the players up to a level they can perform at a level good enough. But he was wrong. They got in the grand final the first year. And it was a great game. It's amazing. Everybody blamed poor old Benny Hunt. You know, why is his mistake the one that counts and all the other mistakes that the other 80 minutes didn't? But it's all Benny Hunt's fault. Anyway, after the game, Cowboys win overtime. Wayne said, you know, we didn't win, but we didn't lose. And the Cowboys hadn't won, they wouldn't have lost either because they both played good football. So, and then a few years later, Cody Walker, for South, very instinctive player, throws a pass, gets intercepted. Penrith win. And after the game, Wayne said, you know, one good thing about our team is I'm glad that they only disappointed, they don't have regret. So if I achieve my goals, at worst, I will have disappointment. So when I'm talking to somebody, I'm saying, if I follow the various things that work for me, and I can always do that. For example, I had a real estate agent come to me a few years ago, and I said, why are you here? He says, oh, my life's spiraling out of control. So what have you changed? What? Well, he says, my wife's left me. I said, that's sad, but what have you changed? He says, what were you doing in your life? What's the spiraling out of control? Oh, go for a run every morning, have a nutritious breakfast. When I get to work in my profile, find 3 people to tell a joke with, bring 3 clients on the phone. And if there's nobody in the office, get out on the road. So what are you doing now? Not going for a run. Not having nutritious breakfast, except having a bit of hooch. Not telling jokes, not ringing my clients, not get on the road. As you know, there's 3 rules of sales. Rule number 1 is see the people. Rule number 2 is see the people. Rule number 3 is see the people. So anyway, I said, well, go back to plan A. Because plan A works for you. He said, plan Z. He rang me a week later and said, it's amazing. Our life's so much happier because now my wife's even willing to talk to me. Now, I don't know if it saved the marriage because I have no idea where she left. But my point about it was he went to Z. So if I'm going to work feeling like absolute crap, and I know on a good day at work, have a cup of coffee, talk to 3 people, when I get out of the car, what can I make sure I do? Have a cup of coffee, talk to 3 people.
Yep.
See, my brain says, dude, don't do that because you don't feel like it. See, that's the problem. See, innocent people say everything I do is my fault. So it doesn't work. I have to fix it. Guilty people say it's not my fault. Innocent people incriminate themselves. Guilty people exonerate themselves. So it's not my fault I dropped the ball. It was raining. Loser. See, the winner would say, I need to practice wet football so next time it rains, I can catch it. See, losers always say, if only it wasn't raining, if only played in position, if only did the right thing, whatever. But the thing is, if only, you know, if only is for losers because you only say if only when it's not true.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be saying if only it was a kangaroo pump right now. You know, you'd only say if only it was the truth. Winners say only if I do what can I make this obstacle an opportunity. Only if I do what make this problem potentiality. Anyway, we better get back to your intro.
Before we go, like literally on that point is what I've been contesting in my mind this last week or so, because if only the election wasn't coming, the sales wouldn't be down in most organisations that we're dealing with, right? The economy's kind of gone to flat because of this election's coming, but it's like 4 months away. It's like everyone's just kind of like stopped. It's like makes no sense whatsoever. So, but that's what I've been contesting in my mind is how do you change it from being a negative to being
Well, firstly, you translate what they just said to you. When I say if only the election wasn't coming, if only Trump hadn't increased tariffs or whatever you want to pick on, if only the rules in rugby league had changed.
Only if.
See, it's not just that. When I say if only, I'm saying I feel good about failing because. See, those people were telling me that when I was talking that day after Timothy went to hospital, they're saying I should have felt good about failing because Timothy's in hospital. In other words, when people give you an excuse, they feel good about failing. Now, why should you never give your coach, your manager, your teacher, your parent an excuse? You're really doing something you don't want to do. Let's imagine that, for example, you're driving fast in the pit of a coal mine. I say, listen, you're driving fast in the pit. Sorry, boss. I was behind and under pressure. Now, what mistake have you just made to me by telling me that?
You're behind and under pressure?
No, you're telling me that it's not your fault. So it's not your fault. What can you not do?
Yeah.
See, I'm not trying to get you to undrive yesterday. I'm worried about tomorrow. So what you've said is every time you're behind and under pressure, you don't have the ability to keep yourself and your workmates safe. Workplace health and safety said I could go to jail letting go back in the pit. You know, oh, you abused the customer. Oh, she's the customer from hell. And not only that, that other staff member abused me. Look, I really appreciate your honesty the way you can't work here anymore. Well, what you're telling me is anytime we don't have perfect customers, perfect staff, you can't stop harassing them. The Anti-Harassment Act of 91-93 said that's against the law. Oh, coach, you played me out of position. Oh, so what you're telling me, you can't play out of position. Oh, that referee wasn't any good. So you can only play well when you're perfect referees. Then we don't. So you shouldn't be here. So excuses are for losers because when I give you excuse, I'm saying I can't fix it. And therefore you should accept my fallibility. And yet when I signed on, I said I could treat customers well. I could drive safely. I could play well despite the referee. And the referee may need a rule book and braille. Doesn't mean that I can't play well.
You've worked with so many Olympic sports stars, elite athletes, and even business people. Is there a common denominator on something that people struggle with psychologically?
No, it's not psychological. The trouble is that they don't know how the brain works. The ones who are successful do know how the brain works. What they've said is, I can always execute at the highest level. Michael Jordan didn't play better during finals. It's like if you give me a microphone, all that's done is give you more energy. I don't change how I speak because I'm on microphone. I don't say, well, I'm on the microphone, got to talk different now, because that's enhanced. So Michael Jordan in finals just played the way he did, and his skills are so high, went there. But what happens, people think this is important, and they need to change. And the moment they do that, they fail. And so the key of successful people is say, I can always do my plan A. I can always speak quickly, tell bad jokes, whatever it is that my plan A is. And so the key of successful people is they execute no matter what. They don't say, if only I was feeling better, if only I was focused. Losers say that. Winners say, if there's a problem, how do I overcome it? Yes, the bridge is out, but I still want to get to my destination. I need to find a different route. Losers say, well, the bridge is out. I'm stuffed. I'm going to stay here. And so successful people always are finding a strategy. How can I get to my destination? Now, remember, success is not a destination. It's a journey. So you've always got to be asking yourself two questions. Question number one, if I'm arrested on charges of trying to be successful, would there be enough evidence to convict me? Would the bears get up, listen, your worship, Phil Jauncey talks big, wins a lot, but never done anything? Question number two, is what I'm doing getting to where I want to get? So me telling a referee about his parentage, is that going to help my cause? I'm annoyed at my spouse, so I yell at her. Does that help my relationship? And so the key is that we always look at what we're doing. So winners in life, I will never talk about something I can't see. I would never say you have a bad attitude, you're undisciplined, you're lazy. Well, two reasons. The first reason, the only people who can judge people are saints, and there's no Saint Phil. But the second thing is I've never seen an attitude. I've never seen a judgment. Never seen a lazy. I can say, I notice you haven't done 2 to 3 things, that you've done 4 to 6 things badly, and you're taking 6 times longer than somebody else. See, I can lie about being a loving dad. I can't lie about giving evidence of being a loving dad and a loving husband. And so winners in life always look, is my behavior getting me to where I want to get? Or if it's not, what's the handbrake to me doing that? And one of the things I have to teach people is the way the brain works, and we'll be doing that later on. But the key is really important. Successful people do not look for excuses for failure. For example, I remember a few years ago, Nadal had a bad back in the final, and he still lost. But he played his darndest. He could have easily had a bad back. With Federer, you could never tell whether he was winning or losing because he played the same. That's what made them champions.
Yep.
Michael Jordan, even when he was an average, he tried baseball, he couldn't get up. I think I don't think he got to double A. It was A, and baseball is A, double A, triple A, and Major League. Excellent athlete. He loved his baseball, but he had to go back to basketball. But the thing is, even as a baseball player, he gave it his best shot. You could see that he was always, there's no excuses for him. But that's why I keep saying excuses are for losers. Because the moment you say, I have an excuse, you're saying, I feel good about failing because. And you can't do that. You always have to say, What am I doing? Is it getting me there? And see, I can control everything I do. And where I differ with a lot of my colleagues in psychology, they're saying you've got to get your mind and your emotions right. I have over 50 years clinical experience as a psychologist. I have 4 degrees, including a doctorate in psychology, and I can't control my mind and I can't control my emotions. So if I'm angry at you, I have no control over that emotion. And I can't wait to get that emotion right. No, I'm angry and I have the choice of saying up yours or good day. Or you've just got a job and I think I deserve it and I think you backstab to get it. I have no control over feeling jealous. Everybody understand me being jealous. Everybody would understand me have a bad reaction. But it's my choice to say, you backstabbing bastard, or saying, listen, I really thought I was going to get the job, really thought I was better for the job. How can I help you? In the first case, people say, we're glad we didn't fill the job. Second case, they say, well, Phil might get the job after all, ultimately, because he's doing the best he can. And see, this is what we have to teach. This is what I like junior sport. It's not about winning, because how many people in junior sport can make major league, NBA, whatever? It's about, in life, you're going to get bad calls. In life, your school's going to let you down. You're going to let your teammates down. They're going to let you down. But you can always give it your best shot. And that's what we want. Citizens in life, doing the best shot. One of the things I found interesting with, a bit politically again, but the way that the recent cyclone was handled was people, here's some advice, do the best you can. Whereas before, here's a mandate. You can't make good choices, so we'll tell you what to do. Now, I understand that. They're worried, didn't trust us, and you're right. There are a lot of fools around. We still saw people, you saw idiots swimming, surfing in a big surf, and well, you're surprised that you broke your back. But the idea is, what we want is people, citizens are saying, I'm always going to ask myself, is what I'm doing what I want? And if I was you, would I be offended by what you're doing to me? We ask ourselves those questions. We have a pretty good society. I keep coming back to Martin Luther King. People forget with wokeism, but Martin Luther King said, I want people to be judged on their character and what they do, not on their history, not on their race, not on their religion. And I think that's what true health is. And later on, when we talk the mind, I'll be talking about why that works. Because our brain was made, are you trying to make things better? If you are, I'm going to help you succeed. But if you're not, I'll help you self-sabotage. And once people understand that simple message about life, and this is why I remember I was talking to a very top tennis player who lost the final at Wimbledon. He said, Phil, I wish I'd known this, because he'd snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. And fortunately, the guy who he beat him in that final reversed, and he won at the U.S. Open. But what I'm saying is, nobody taught people that. You'd think we should be teaching those kids at school, if I'm depressed, what should I be doing? Why am I depressed? See, pain is good. Now, don't get me wrong here. Don't whip yourself. But when my brain gives me emotional pain, that's good. See, if I'm walking barefoot on this floor in here and I step on a thumbtack, it's good that I don't have leprosy. Leprosy means you can't feel pain. So what's the purpose of the pain? When I step on thumbtack, what's the purpose of that pain?
Do something.
Yeah, stop doing it. When you get pain, the brain says what you're doing now is not helping you. It's going to hurt you, and you need to change. Now, bit of physiology, the pain that I step on a thumbtack, I think the pain's in my foot. But in fact, it's not. It's in my head. What happens is when I step on the thumbtack, all the dendrites, nerve endings, send the brain up to the head office. And head office says, you got a dysfunction down there, yeah. Is it a bad dysfunction? Nah, it's just a twig. Yeah, it's just a thumbtack. So the brain says, look, I got it because remember, our brain is our slave, willing slave. So the brain says, the master's pretty thick. So for you to get the master to change, we have to give him big pain. So we give pain down the foot. Now, the master has 3 choices to deal with this pain. The first one is I could anesthetize the thumbtack. Don't feel any pain. Second one is I can anesthetize head office. I remember playing basketball at times where I think, oh, somebody's getting blood on me. At the end of the game, it was my own. But see, all the endorphins are firing. Head office was anesthetized. I couldn't feel it. And the third thing you can do is pull out the thumbtack. Now, you would think the most important thing to do would be pulling out the thumbtack. Would you agree on that?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is where I have problems with my colleagues. I believe all pain is healthy. So if I'm having pain with you emotionally, I think that's good. It may be that you falsely judged me and all sorts of things, but I've given you some evidence that there's a problem. Now, if a fire starts and the alarm goes off, you don't turn off the alarm. But see, what happens with emotional issues, I'm not talking about physiological, neurological. See, I couldn't go to a doctor and say, listen, I think I've got cancer and they give me drugs. I think I've got MS. I mean, that's when I broke my wrist a couple of years ago. They didn't just put a cast on, they give an x-ray. But if you go, and why go to GP, say this, I think my marriage is breaking up, you probably leave with a prescription. Well, why is that? We said,
Great question.
And the answer is, I believe. Now, when I first started talking about this, only about 3-4% of my colleagues agreed with me. I'm about getting up to 30%, but I'm still in the minority. What I'm thinking is, you see, the reason you get examined is if you can't find the etiology, the cause, you can't get the cure. You need both C's. Now, with emotional problems, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, whatever, there's no obvious etiology. Now, if there's no etiology, if you have a disease and they can't cure it, what do? They give you palliative care. So now we give you something so you don't feel it. So I understand. I'm not blaming the GP. And I understand if a parent's got somebody lost in the force, you give them a sedative, of course, short term. And I don't mind when you do your ACL, they give you some morphine, but you don't stay on it. And so the idea is that emotional pain, so if I'm an athlete, and I'm not feeling good before a game, my brain says your preparation's wrong. All right? So I have some players that are quiet. They need to start speaking up. The key is the brain will always give you pain if what you're doing is not working. And that means you must always embrace that pain. See, if I go to a doctor with my knee hurting, he gives me more pain. He's not being cruel, especially the physios. They don't stop pushing. They get the hardest first.
It's a little bit different in your brain, right? Like someone with debilitating anxiety, how can you tell them just, find the pain, fix it, and go and do it? I've seen athletes where they're dealing with severe anxiety, and that's
See, the question is, why are they anxious? They're anxious because they have a passive mindset. They're saying, if only I do well, if only I don't do badly, if only I get selected, if only I get that contract. They have if only messages. And the brain hates if only messages. So that's why we talk about an active mindset. So what I say to people is, when you're anxious, what are you thinking about? Oh, I don't want to do badly. Generally, right? Just like, but if you say to them, okay, now, what are you doing when you're not anxious? Give me a story. I had a 13-year-old girl come to me years ago. Ian Healy has this foundation where disadvantaged kids come to you. Anyway, it's track and field. And I said, why are you here? She said, I got really nervous. I said, that's just normal. It's fuel. She says, no, I vomit. Well, that's not good. So I said, listen, when you go to the lower track meets and you run fast and you don't vomit, what do you do in the car? She had my profile. Oh, I talk rubbish, sing. When you get the track, what do you want? Run around. Okay. So when you go to the important meets, when you're nervous, what do? I'm quiet. And when you get to the track, I don't run around. See if I got this straight. When you talk rubbish in the car and run around at the track, you run fast and don't vomit. When you're quiet in the car, quiet at the track, you run slowly and you vomit. What do you think she'd do tomorrow? She's going to Queensland track meet. I'll go to plan A. She broke 3 Queensland records. Now, were her skills any different before and after she talked to me? She thought her problem was her anxiety. No, her anxiety came because she was doing the wrong thing. Now, just before the Tokyo Olympics, she put something in the paper and said, one thing Dr. Phil taught me is that nerves are good. See, I think anxiety is great. If you're saying, I've got anxiety, good. You're ready to play. That's good.
So this is my problem. Like, I get that. You said nerves, and nerves are good. I agree with you, right? You've got to have a certain amount of nervousness before you compete in anything. But what about the people who have a diagnosed anxiety as an issue?
I had a cricketer come to me years ago and say, oh, Dr. Phil, I get out in the nervous 90s. Now, cricket's a really funny sport because they think 99 is significantly worse than 101. They don't even know milestone. Milestone in England in the old days, they put this stone up about 10 milestones someplace. They put 10M on it. So you know how far it was. It's called a milestone. Anyway, so if this guy's getting out in the nervous 90s, what do I know he's done? He thinks his problem's anxiety. It's not. What do I know he's done?
stepping backwards, not
He's
forward.
changed.
But it's not just anxiety. Let's call it mental illness, right? You're
Well,
sort of
mental
saying-
illness is different.
Yeah,
Mental
so
illness is where
isn't
people, the
anxiety-
brain is no longer functioning as a slave.
Isn't anxiety a mental illness?
I don't think so. I think it, again, it
That's
depends. There are
interesting.
psychiatric conditions. I'm not talking about psychiatric conditions.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the average Joe Blow who gets anxious, for example, a job interview.
Yeah. Okay.
Has that
You're
has
going
that
to be
changed?
anxious, aren't you? That's totally normal. What you want to ask is, for example, I have doctors come in after 4 years. They have to.
I think that's
take
what I
an
want to
exam.
differentiate. Where you're
Okay,
that
what's
makes
your-
yeah.
So that they, after 4 years, they have to have a exam where the written exam, but they also have to go around with doctors watching them. Now it's the same skills on the ward, and yet they have a very high failure rate. I had one guy who failed 4 times. Good doctor. Now what had happened was he actually changed because I said, "How would you walk?" I said, "I'm your patient." I said, "How would you come to me on the ward if you had some students watching?" He said, "Oh, how you going?" He's leaning forward, like leaning forward. I said, "Now in your exams, what do you do?" He's leaning back like this. So lean forward. And I said, little things. Now what he did, because you have to go to a different hospital, because you have to see your own patients, he had to go to Darwin. So he practiced getting in the lift. He said, "How do I get in a lift on a good day?" Remember, he'd failed 4 times. He passed. I have not had one doctor fail on me that's come to see me. And one time I was talking to Cairns during COVID, and they said the highest pass rate they'd ever had. Now, I know nothing about medicine. Well, very little. I'm certainly not a doctor. The thing about it is that they were thinking they had to impress. Just like people read. Why would you ever read talking to an audience?
Same as job interviews.
It's the same thing. You're trying to impress. And see, let's assume that you're going to talk to 5,000 people tomorrow at a conference. I guarantee you think you need notes. Yet I talked to you over a glass of wine or a beer. You didn't need more notes. See, I don't use notes to help you with their tackling. So why do I do that? Because you see, you're now thinking, I need to say it well. But you see, when you're actually performing plan A, you're thinking, what's the person hearing? When I do job interviews over the years, I actually ask myself, is it really the job I want? Rather than, I need the job. I remember one time I actually got a really good job years ago. Actually, it was Crazy Clark. I actually said, I'm not the person for you. I said, what do you mean? I don't think it'll work. I actually got the job. But they'd had this plan that they picked up somebody who wanted me to teach it. And they'd had some people who actually said they will do it. That didn't bother them whether they succeeded or not. See, that's the difference between training and education. Training, did I present all the information you need? Education, what you learn. So as a public speaker, right now, I'm not listening to what I say. I'm skipping words. My wife gets really annoyed because she thinks that she was an English teacher for years. Actually, I'm lucky because she's become my PA. So I tell people I sleep with my secretary. My wife doesn't mind. Actually, I think she does. But anyway, the key here is that I focus on you guys. All right? Like when I do I can't have both earphones on. When I do radio, I keep one ear off because I got to be in my natural. See, if it's there, it's artificial. This is normal. So right now, you can see I'm talking the way it'd be. We could be in a pub.
This is because
exactly
we're in our comfort zone. And it sounds like what you're talking about before is that when we're in our comfort zone, we feel natural, it's easy, it's flowing. But when we're in a different position or situation that we're not used to, we take ourselves outside of our comfort zone and then we change who we actually are.
Absolutely. And this is why you need to embrace that you're outside your comfort zone. Like another illustration I give, it's interesting. A few years ago, University of Melbourne did a study of my stuff at ANAM, Australian National Academy of Music, because I work with actors, musicians. And they said, what surprised them wasn't that the people I worked with did better than the people I didn't work with in performance and in auditions and so forth, was that they had the same amount of performance anxiety. See, if they thought performance anxiety is bad, it's good. I have a lot of energy right now. I'm really pumping. Okay? That's good. If I said, relax. Notice as soon as I say it, what do? Shoulders back, relaxing. Suddenly my impact goes down. The big thing is when you feel good, your shoulders are wider and your arms are wider. You know? So you're relaxed. In an interview, you get really tense. Now,
Have you just been people watching your whole life and just like studying the reaction of what happens in situations?
That's how I originated. Like when I was in rugby league in the early days, I was I was at a teacher's college, and I was running the lines, and strapping, doing things in the pub, running raffles and all that. And there was no such thing as sports psychology. But I kept thinking, well, the psychology of counseling. See, in counseling, what you get people doing, what are you doing that's not working for you? So in sport, we brought that in.
I want to touch that again. You said earlier that there's a difference between performance psychology and sports psychology. In our last podcast, we had Riley Day and Cedric, and they both put a huge emphasis on the importance of having the right sports psychologist at the right time in your career, which could make or break your career, right? And they gave us examples, but you're saying there's a big difference between, and there's only two things that a sports psychologist said,
that particular degree I was talking about. Look, there are a lot of really good sports psychologists that call them sports psychologists, but you're finding more and more of them call themselves performance psychologists. Because see, when you come to me, you don't want to leave me feeling good. You want to leave me performing better. Yeah. So that's what performance is all about. So if you're in business or you're in whatever, having hassles, those doctors didn't want to feel good. They wanted to pass the exam. Yeah. All right? You want to make sure you do well in the interview. And so this is where what happens is that when people say you got to be confident, we can't always be confident. Let's assume, I remember that one job that I got. Actually, I needed the money. I was a consultant at the time, another word for unemployed. And my wife was teaching, and it was embarrassing that she was earning not only more than me, a lot more than me. And I needed the job. But I taught myself, just do what you'd normally do. And that got me through it. And this is where people get caught up. They're saying, if only I can get this right. And the if only drives them down. And that's why you need to embrace the pain, that I'm getting emotional pain right now because I'm doing it. Now, there's another thing about the brain that we haven't talked about. A, pain's good. B, is the brain, how do you think the brain works out which thoughts to give you and which thoughts not to give you?
I've never studied that. It's interesting.
It's really simple.
Evolution? I don't know.
See, people think it's important. Now, what happens is I call it the front desk secretary of the brain. It's actually called the brain stem reticular formation, but I talk to footy players. What it is that the brain says, when I give you a thought, if you act on that thought, I'll make the thought louder. If you don't act on that thought, I'll make the thought softer. So if I'm your secretary and I give you a message from Fred Bloggs and you don't ring him, I give you another message, Fred Bloggs, you don't ring him. Give you a third message, Fred Bloggs, ring somebody else, and I'll stop giving the message. I give a message for Sam Smith, ring right away, keep giving the message. So if you get an icy cold water and the brain says, get out, it's cold, and you keep swimming. Brain says, get out, it's cold, you keep swimming. Brain says, idiot, get out, it's cold, you keep swimming. What the brain does is it turns off the cold because master, you're not acting on it. If you get out right away, then the brain makes it, if you put your toe back, it will actually feel colder. So that I used to live near a refinery and couldn't smell it. People said, how do you handle the pollen? I couldn't smell it. Didn't react to it. For example, you know how ladies put on some perfume because they think it's worn off and they smell like a perfume factory? Russ guys say hi and peels the paint off the wall. They want to ask you, why can't you smell it? People say, you used to. No. What reaction does a woman make to perfume when she puts it on? No. She doesn't go, pimples. When's the last time halfway through a workout you're, oh yeah, it really clears the sinuses. So what happens is you can't smell it. Smokers can't tell their people can smell it. And so this is the way the brain works. It's that if you react on it, so the more scaredly you acted on 10 stories up, you got more scared feelings. So the more anxiously you act, which you get. I remember a few years ago, I've been in Bangladesh, came back, and I had unbelievable diarrhea, whatever, Hershey squirts the next day, and was washed out. Fortunately, it just was a 24-hour bug. But the day after, I had to go down in Brisbane to give a talk, 2-hour talk. And when I feel good, I walk really quickly. On the train, I'm thinking, I don't know why dogs are sick. So on the Tuesday, I was sick as a dog. On Wednesday, when I give the talk, I was weak as a kitten. I don't know why kittens are weak and dogs are sick. But anyway, I was weak as a kitten. And I wanted to walk slowly, but I walked quickly. When I got to the place, the women organized going to get something. Oh, okay, it'd be really good because I was crook yesterday. You sure? I said, I'll be fine. Anyway, very quick. She said, I thought you were sick. I said, I was yesterday. Now, I was knackered when I got home. But see, if I'd acted sickly, I would have got more sick. Teenage girls love to sulk. I said, girls, why do you sulk? Oh, she insulting me. She's gone. I said, how to feel while you're sulking? Bad. So why'd you sulk for 3 days? It was a bad insult. Well, how to feel the second day? Worse. Third day? Worse. How to feel when you stop? Good. So why didn't you stop first day? See, what happens is when you do that. So if I act anxiously, I get more anxious feeling. If I act depressedly, see, I almost never get angry, depressed, or anxious. That's because I'm not a closet wuss. I'm an open wuss. You know, wusses don't like feeling bad. I don't like feeling bad. So I worked out when I act angrily, negatively to people, people don't like me. But when I smile to people, tell them jokes, compliment them, give them things on time, on spec, they like me. So I'm glad it's moral. But it also makes me feel good. Why would you practice feeling bad? I don't beat my head against the floor or table because it feels so good when I stop. And so people have all these things. So they picked up that you have to feel good to act good. No, when you act good, it feels good. And see, I have control over everything I do. I have no control over feeling anxious over a job interview or being in the gold medal round.
Do you think it's getting worse because of the new social media, the gratification?
That's what I was going to ask.
I really want to know, like what you're saying makes a lot of sense, but how do you control it? How do you, especially right?
See, what I'm fighting continually with teams is trying to change that. For example, schools.
How do you change it when you've got this thing right in front of your face and if everyone wants gratification instantaneously?
Well, what first you have to do is teach them how the brain works. See, a few years ago, I had to go to Warwick for the Australian polo cross team. I've never even heard of polo cross. It's lacrosse on horses. Now, even if I was a good equestrian and a good lacrosse player, I couldn't play polo cross because I didn't know the rules. See, nobody explained the rules. And see, you had two rules. You had the rule of pain is good. When you feel pain emotionally, that's good because saying what you're doing is not working. If you don't want bad thoughts, don't act badly. For example, everyone can see I like to watch my weight, so keep working, watch it. You know, people are six-pack, I have a slap. But, you know, when I used to pushback ride 80 kilometers, the first K out, my brain says, listen, you're 70-year-old Galah, you're too old to be doing this. But I pedal harder. At the end of 80 k's, let's start. You've done the same thing. Mm-hmm. So what's happened? But if I'd got off after 1 kilometer because I'm tired, I have to get off half kilometer. So that's good. But the third thing is, and we mentioned this before, the brain says when you have more pressure, I don't know if you want to succeed or fail. How do you think the brain works that out? I was riding my push bike down Settlement Road, for those who don't know, it's a big steep road at Capera, and going about 55K down, and you with extended mirrors bumps the bike starts wobbling. And I must have leant back because all my instincts told me to slow down. See, this is the second thing. Whenever you go to Z, you want to fail. And your first reaction to anxiety is go to Z. But fortunately, that feels bad. So the brain says, I'll give you pain. Now, because I felt bad, I sped up. Because slowing down would have been worse. But I can see the trees, the top tires. So you can always go to A. Sometimes you don't know what your A is. I was in Canada with my wife a few years ago. And we're walking this path way out of nowhere. And in front of us, about 40 meters, suddenly saw this big black mama bear. And I must have leaned back because all my instincts were wrong. My instincts said, freeze, bear, get your food without effort. Run, bear, get some exercise before you eat. Scream, bear, here's where your food is. I got in the stance. And as soon as I got in the stance, my brain said, sing, the hills are alive. And Mama Bear went. Baby bear kept coming.
You started singing in front of the
music.
You seriously started.
Is that true story?
It does. It's
true story. And I said, how did you know to do that? And I said, I didn't know how to do that. But my brain, because I went to A, gave me this strategy. As a coach, sometimes I know what to do. So I lean forward. Suddenly these words come out. So the key of the brain is that we're saying that when something happens to you, you need to know your reason you're failing, you're probably going to Z. Let me give you two stories that you now know the power positive doing. Remember, the power positive doing is, if what you're doing is not working, brain gives you pain. If you don't want bad thoughts, don't act badly. When you're under pressure, if you go to A, you'll succeed even better, like the Michael Jordans. But if you go to Z, the brain will give you pain. And if you fix it, the brain will succeed. But if you don't fix it, just think about it, self-sabotage, all right? All right, I had a lady come to me. I feel, been telling this story for so long. I actually think she was old. She's 71. I'm 77. I have this shirt that says, it really bothers me when I see old people, same age I am. Anyway, life's like a roll of toilet paper. Closer you get to the end, the faster it goes. Or you could say life gives you the sheets. But anyway, I said, why are you here? She said, I'm so lonely. My husband died 6 years ago. So she had an if only message, didn't she? If only her husband hadn't died, she'd be happy. What are the chances of that changing?
No.
Now, remember, for 6 years, she hasn't been fixing it. So what's the brain do if you don't fix it? Self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. So I wait for it. She said, I hate myself. Why do you hate yourself? You sleep all the time. So, okay, let's get this straight. Your problem is that you're lonely, yeah? And the way you're fixing it is sleeping all the time, not seeing anybody. You don't understand. So you're right. Sounds stupid to me. I'm a real bastard. So I said to her, what did you used to do when you were happy? But before my husband, I don't care when you're happy. I used to go to bingo every day. Good. Meeting people, good mental simulation. And you weren't sleeping all the time. I had the best Rose Garden retirement village. I said, we got this straight. When you went to bingo in Rose Garden, you were happy. When you don't go to bingo, don't go to Rose Garden. You have husbands, I know. And you want to be happy, and you're unhappy. So what do you think you should change? Go back to bingo Rose Garden? Now, my house is downstairs, office downstairs. She was leaning back when she came down. She was leaning forward when she left. She hadn't changed anything yet. But she had a strategy. The brains have... Anyway, a month later, her nephew rang me up. And he said to me, what have you done with my auntie? She's reinvigorated, revitalized. She's at bingo every day and got the best Rose Garden retirement village. Now, what I did for her, could you do? See, this is what I'm trying to tell those kids of Mars, and now a kid comes up. Oh, what have you changed? I'm not enjoying my food anymore. What have you changed? See, these are not about getting your emotions right. I need to get rid of this emotion of anxiety. All right? So again, I'm not talking about psychiatric conditions. I'm talking about just normal, everyday. It's normal. The more important it is, you're going to have more fuel in the first day of the season than you do at training. You have more fuel if you play State of Origin than you do whatever. That's normal. What you want to make sure you use that fuel to help you perform better, rather than letting that full self-sabotage. Second story, all right? So first story you could do. Second story, I had a jockey come to me. He had my profile. And he says, I said, why are you here? He said, I've lost my confidence. Now, I'm not just a bastard, I'm a sarcastic bastard. I said, really? Do you remember you lost it? And I walked around the room looking at rubbish bins and drawers. I haven't seen it. What color is it? How much is it weigh? Then I told him the rules of the game, how my brain works. Now, what was my question to him now? Because he said, I've lost my confidence. What's he saying when he says he lost his confidence? I'm not writing well, correct? Someone said I've lost his confidence and not performing well. So what was my question to him?
What have you changed?
Yep.
See, guy's a performance psychologist. And so he said, oh, when I ride well, I get the track late and talk rubbish. And I said, what about when you talk to the trainer? Oh, I hardly listen. See, he had a profile like me. I'm the sort of person that's inductive. Give me a big picture. You know, I don't need details. And I said, okay, so what are you doing now? So I get the track early and study form. Now, our brains are like computers. Apple and Microsoft are really good computers, but you don't put Apple software in Microsoft and Microsoft on Apple, all right? It's the wrong software. So your computer will crash with the wrong software. So he was doing what my wife, somebody who has to get the early perform. That's why I do profiles for people, like how the computer works. And he says, I get the track early, study form. And when the trainer talks, I take notes. Okay, so exact opposite of what he should do. So when you get there late, talk rubbish and hardly listen to the trainer, why don't you get the horse? Leaning forward, elbows loose, hands loose, like the horse rides me. Good, I win. Yeah. So when you get there early, study form and take notes. I'm leaning back, elbows are tight, and I lose. Flying up to town the next day. I said, which you prefer, winning or losing? Oh, I'd like to win. So what are you going to do tomorrow? Plan A. He wrote 2 winners. About 6 months later, I was down in Sydney at a conference, and my phone was off, and turned it on and had a message from him. So I got back to him and said, oh, you rang me this morning. He said, yeah, I thought I needed you, but didn't. I just found somebody to talk crap with. What a winner in a second. Now, what I did for him, could you guys do?
Absolutely.
Yep.
So see, this is the key, is I'm trying to teach people that it's not hard.
From society, though, what's stopping us as humans? Because this doesn't seem difficult. Are we like being brainwashed to only think one direction?
You see, I understand, during the McCarthy era, when Norman Vincent Peale wrote The Power of Positive Thinking, and everybody's taught you got to be positive, and that's why schools get me to talk to them. They had 2 weeks of teaching them the traditional sports psychology, by breathing, focusing, imaging, all the things that doesn't work. And they get me there, and I say, if you believe in being positive, you should give up. And he gave me that look. I said, the problem is if I'm teaching you, you have to be positive. See, if mindfulness is, until I get my mind right, I can't perform, it's not going to help me. Because I've been to 3 Olympics, all right? And Olympians aren't positive. Later on, they say they were. I've been a State of Origin when people, oh, yeah, we're so positive. Oh, there they weren't. They just acted positively. And the key is, but we picked up the propaganda is you've got to be positive. Can't let kids feel bad. See, the last thing I want to say, if you've had a bad game, don't worry about it. You'll be fine. Next time you do better. See, have I done you a favor by telling you that?
No.
See, I want you to feel pain in the game. Not that my dead grandmother could do better than you. I want you to feel pain, saying, look, the way I executed didn't work. And that's my goal with all teams.
Is that because we don't want to feel the pain again? So we have to understand it to learn.
Yeah, well, see, the pain is really telling you you're stepping on the thumbtack. And you need to sense that. So you stopped executing. So what the Broncos needed to learn in that particular game is they stopped executing, even though they still had the same skills. My favorite game last year with the Dolphins was not when we beat the Broncos by about 40 points. It's actually a game we lost. We Broncos knocked on, but the referee didn't see it. Reese Walsh scores a try. Then they kicked. We had Trey Fuller was there, our little fullback, and drops the ball. Broncos score. That's it within 4 minutes. And then Milf decides to hand the ball to Kovo, and he scores. So 6 minutes, 8 minutes, 18 points. Our guys, most times they'd give up. Our guys said stick into it. Now, we didn't win the game, but we scored 2 tries in the second half. But the point was we taught them never turn your computer off. So embrace the pain. So when you make a mistake, how often do you see somebody give away something, do something stupid in a couple of minutes? So it's in our lives. If I'm having trouble with my wife, it's really important to embrace the pain. I don't want to pretend there's not that problem there. You know, if I'm having a trouble with my boss, and I'm thinking if only I didn't have that bastard, say, that's not going to do me any good. I got to say, only if I do what can I deal with that bastard work nicely.
I really want to know, you talk about, working with athletes, right? But how important is it for that same skill set that you've sort of given the athletes for the coaches or the managers to have? Because
all of them.
I work with a lot of coaches. They've got no idea about.
And that's the sad thing. When I started talking the one team, the coaches didn't come. I think what a waste of time, because see, this is so left field.
So do you work with coaches as well?
I won't go. I won't work company if the head of the company's not coming. I don't work with the coaches. And by the way, I should tell you,
but
I probably
train the coaches to be able to do what you do with.
Sure.
With
my goal is to become redundant, and so that Wayne complimented one time, says, I keep teaching what you teach, Phil. I mean, that's a real compliment. See, the best compliment you get is when the coach sees that their own ideas, not yours. And this is the key, though. I must admit, sometimes I feel like I need a compass, because I was with Australian cricket twice, won 15 tests in a row, and John Buchanan left. He said the next coach, Tim Nielsen, walked me. He said, no one go another direction. Been with the Broncos 15 years, and 5 premierships. And when Wayne left the first time, I said, Ivan Hinchak brought me, go in another direction. Lions, 15 years, 3 premierships. Guess what happened when Lee Matthews left? Another direction. So obviously I need a compass.
I think 3 big names, right? Lee Matthews, John Buchanan, and Wayne Bennett, right? They're legends. I just want to ask you this. And when you were there, they were winning, and not so much after you left. Is it them making you look good, or are you making them look good?
It's actually teamwork. I was just talking to Wayne the other day. We make a good team. And you see, we all have a little bit to do. My bit's really small.
Yeah.
My bit is just helping people understand how the brain works and reminding them, like with the Lions, used to walk the lines with them when they came off. So just remind us, we're going to Z, go back to A, remind them. And that's why, with them at games, remind them. But I also watch the games. A player rings me up later on and said, let's talk about why you went to Z. And these are teams even that I'm not working continuing with. I get players ring me up. And so it's helping them not need me. And what I'm teaching an athlete is what I'm teaching a mom having trouble with their kids, or a businessman where, not getting as many sales as we want, whatever. Helping them understand what's my plan A. And to me, I actually gave a talk at Nunda State School one time with grade 3s, grade 6. So it's not hard. As a baseball player said to me once, it's not rocket surgery. Same guy said a leopard doesn't change his stripes. Yeah. But the thing is, it's really simple. And I'm not talking about extreme psychiatric conditions, neurological conditions. I'm talking about just the average Joe Blow who says, I'm really nervous about an interview. I'm playing my first final, all these things, because they think because it's a final, they need to change.
The summary I've heard is just lean in and embrace it.
Yeah. What you mentioned profiling.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
What I did back in 1986, Wayne Bennett was coaching State of Origin. And we had 2 hookers with totally different personalities, Turtle and Box, Greg Kinescu and Steve Wolters. And Wayne is the most educated, uneducated man I've ever met, because he had to leave school at 14, but he's really got the doctorate in so many areas where he studies, just not through universities. Anyway, he said, Phil, can you do a profile? And so for the last, since 86, what we do, and you come to me, I have a profile that determines whether you're what we call a Mozzie, enforcer, thinker, feeler. We don't have time today to go through them. But what that does is help me understand, for example, thinker-feelers never feel positive before a game, but they grow into the game. So if you're a thinker-feeler, you don't make your first tackle best tackle, you'll grow into it. Mozzie enforcers were very verbal, very active. The more we think about things, the worse we are. All right, and so there's all different characteristics. So if you come to me for counseling, do a profile. But any team, I do profiles for. Or
I
any
heard you get them to answer
each one. So it
questions
takes
and-
about 5 minutes, 10 minutes max.
So
It's
just a questionnaire.
questionnaire. I've got 40 items of 4 items,
Yeah.
40 lines of 4 items. And
It's similar
it's
to like
really successful.
Myers-Briggs and disc
Except
profiling.
much simpler.
and-
Because I was at, went to
Hope it's not
United
like
States.
Myers-Briggs. That doesn't have any.
And Rutgers, and their coach said, "Oh, we use disc, which is good, expensive." I said, "So he's a D, is that how do you talk to him differently?" I don't. You see, what I'm finding with this coaches use, like it's now been translated into Spanish because the Toronto Blue Jays coaches work with my stuff to help understand players. Because the way you understand, we're talking about how you learn. See, I learn inductively, and my wife learns deductively. And it's like if half of you spoke Spanish, English, and I just spoke, es importante para hablar español porque el español es muy mejor lengua, you'd be saying that's not fair. So you find coaches sometimes
I'll
go
be
to teams
translating it.
and they have the wrong profile. I've seen good coaches go to teams but use the wrong language because they didn't see, they talk to everybody the same. Even though you did the profiles, they talk to everybody the same. Whereas you actually find Lee Matthews in his book put a chapter in his book on profiles better than me. Coaches are ringing me up, can we get a profile on our team? Because we need a guy from Japan just ring up his basketball team. I need to do profiles of my players. It's a really simple little thing. You'll still find, like at Roy's funeral, they were talking about him being a Mozzie. And this is at the funeral. And the players getting together. And they call me Moz because I'm a Mozzie. And so it's a simple little thing that I use to help players. So when I first talk to a team is I go through the positivity, how the brain works. Second, we go through the profiles in front of everybody, we share them. And then we get people individual profiles. So it's good, like Darius Boyd, his demons, it's great when you get a young player and Darius said, I get worried, how does it make you feel? Oh, it's good that it found a test. But Darius said, but then this is what I did. Or like Jonathan Brown or somebody else. So you get the experienced players sharing players of a similar psychological profile. And that's been really successful for me. And so that's what that's about. We don't have time today to go through it, but yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's I've got to get to training as well, so we need to
Wrap it up with a quick fire questions.
Yeah, go for it.
All right, you ready? What's the most common mental roadblock that you see in elite athletes?
Believing they got to feel good.
Yes or no, pre-game rituals, are they effective?
Pre-game routines are effective.
Yep. Who is the most mentally tough athlete that you've ever worked with?
That's really, really hard.
If you just had to pick one, just go with.
I go for 2, Shane Webke and Michael Voss.
Oh wow, both. Okay.
And if you could train the mind of any athlete in history, who would it be?
I wouldn't want to train their mind. I want them to understand how their mind works.
Great.
That big.
If anybody, do you say athlete or person?
Athlete.
Athlete in history. Who needs to have their mind? You're actually talking about somebody who failed in history.
Who would you like to work? Who would you like to
Who
work
would I
with?
like to work with in history?
It can't be fair. Michael Jordan. What if he had the mental aptitude?
He's
to
already
keep
good.
coming? He could
You could see. I mean, you could see from him probably Jesse Owens,
have done. Yeah, wow. Okay,
because
that's-
he was a guy went over to Nazi Germany, black,
Yep.
and just formed unbelievable.
Yeah.
What a great character. And same thing, United States. All the things that go through. So,
Yeah.
tons of
And the
time.
favourite sports team that you've worked with?
There's so many I've worked with. Really enjoyed, of course, this recent, the Dolphins. It was real fun to work with them. The new team, enthusiasm.
Yep. And what's one book every athlete should read?
Other than yours.
Yep.
I really can't think of a book
Yeah, okay.
per se for them to read because it's what they need. What athletes, it's not to read something, what they need to understand how the brain works.
Yep.
And so if they can get something that helps them do that. But I think books aren't what you find. I think so often people get formulas in books. They don't want formula. You understand what's my handbrake to working. It's interesting. Word motivation, I know it's only very quick, but word motivation doesn't mean incentive. It comes from the word motion. So, in the old days when motivation first came out, it talked about why is this, what had been preventing this energy before. So motivation actually means removing handbrakes, not getting incentives.
Yep.
I'll answer for Phil. Breathe by James Nestor. Just do it.
Okay. Is visualization overrated or underrated?
Overrated.
The biggest myth about sports psychology that you'd like to debunk?
That you have to feel good to act good.
Your favourite holiday destination?
That's a curveball.
I love going up to Majimba, but also I like being in Mexico. So
What's harder to fix, self-doubt or fear of failure?
self-doubt is the fear of failure.
Great answer. In one word, what separates champions from the rest?
Execution.
If you weren't a sports performance psychologist, what would you be doing?
Like many other things. I'd be a teacher, counselor.
What legacy would you like to leave behind?
To be redundant, that people have learned how they can have success without having somebody else
All right.
get them there.
Last questions. Finish this sentence. I believe.
That if it is to be, it's up to me.
Great answer. Thanks so much for your insights, Phil. It's been an absolute hoot.
interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the M26 Fit podcast. Remember, real growth happens one step at a time, and consistently working both on your mind and your body for 26 minutes every day will change your life. Hit subscribe to keep the inspiration going, and don't forget to share this episode with somebody who needs that extra boost. Until next time, stay connected and stay active.